The police call came in just after noon. A calm female voice on the other end of the line told the dispatcher that her children were dead. All of them. There was no screaming, no hysteria, no panic, just a flat statement of fact. When officers arrived at the quiet suburban home, what they found would permanently alter how the world understands motherhood, mental illness, and the terrifying power of belief. 5 children lay lifeless inside a house that looked, from the outside, like the embodiment of American domestic safety. And their mother was waiting. Welcome to Unimaginable True Crimes. Here, we expose the unimaginable, one case at a time.
To neighbors, the Yates family appeared deeply religious, disciplined, and devoted. The parents believed in traditional roles. The father worked relentlessly. The mother stayed home, homeschooling the children, teaching them scripture, structure, and obedience. This was not a chaotic household. It was controlled, orderly, quiet. And behind that order was a woman who had been unraveling for years. Andrea had struggled after the birth of her children, not in the way society often expects. She wasn't simply sad or overwhelmed. She was disappearing. Doctors had warned that additional pregnancies could worsen her condition. Hospitalizations followed. Psychotic breaks came and went. She believed she was evil. She believed she was corrupting her children. She believed the devil was watching her failures. And yet, the family continued exactly as before. More structure, more isolation, more pressure. Because faith, they believed, would fix what medicine could not. Andrea's thinking became rigid, black and white, pure and damned, saved or lost. In her mind, she was failing God, and if she failed God, her children would burn for eternity. This was not metaphorical, it was real to her. She began to believe that death was not punishment, it was rescue. That killing her children would spare them from corruption, sin, and hell. This is what makes this case so disturbing. There was no hatred in her mind, only terror. The morning was ordinary. Breakfast routines, quiet movements, a father leaving for work. Andrea waited. She didn't act in a frenzy. She didn't lose control. She followed a plan that existed only in her mind. One by one, she drowned her children in the bathtub. She laid them out carefully afterward. She called the police. Then she waited. Responding officers were unprepared. Even seasoned detectives later admitted the scene shattered them, not because of gore, but because of intent. The children were positioned. The house was silent. The mother was calm. She did not run. She did not deny. She explained. She said she had saved them. Andrea told investigators that she believed Satan had claimed her, that her children were doomed if they stayed alive, that she had waited for the right moment, and that now, finally, they were safe. This was not a lie. This was a belief system built inside a fractured mind, reinforced by isolation, fear, and untreated psychosis. Society is conditioned to see mothers as protectors. This case shattered that assumption, not because Andrea was cruel, but because she was convinced she was doing the right thing. That realization frightened people more than rage ever could. If love can become lethal, if protection can turn into destruction, what does safety even mean? The courtroom became a battleground. Was Andrea Yates a monster, or was she profoundly ill? Prosecutors argued that she knew right from wrong. Defense experts described psychosis so severe that reality itself had collapsed. The public watched, horrified, not knowing what outcome would feel like justice, because no verdict could bring 5 children back. Could this have been prevented? Doctors had warned. Hospitalizations had occurred. The signs were documented, and still the system failed. Not one failure, many. Because Andrea Yates is not alone. There are other cases, other mothers, other belief systems where love mutates into lethal certainty. And understanding this case means confronting something deeply uncomfortable. Mental illness does not always look chaotic. Sometimes it looks disciplined. Sometimes it looks devoted. Sometimes it looks like faith taken too far. Long before the bathtub, long before the police arrived, long before the world learned her name, Andrea Yates was already living inside a prison built by her own mind. This was not sudden, it was not hidden, and it was not misunderstood by everyone. It was documented. Andrea Yates was first diagnosed with postpartum psychosis after the birth of her fourth child. This is not postpartum depression. Postpartum psychosis is rare, severe, and life-threatening. It includes delusions, hallucinations, disorganized thinking, loss of reality, obsessive religious fear, suicidal and homicidal ideation. Doctors warned the family clearly. Another pregnancy could be catastrophic, not emotionally difficult, catastrophic. Andrea herself had already attempted suicide multiple times. She had been hospitalized, she had stopped eating, she had become nearly catatonic. At one point, she could not hold a conversation. This was not subtle. Each hospitalization followed the same pattern. Andrea would stabilize under medication. She would improve under supervision. She would show clarity, and then she would be sent back into the same environment. Same isolation, same pressure, same expectations. 5 children, homeschooling, strict religious discipline, minimal adult contact, no daycare, no community buffer, no meaningful relief. The structure that appeared stable from the outside was slowly suffocating her. Andrea's faith was not casual. It was rigid, literal, apocalyptic. She believed salvation was fragile, that sin was contagious, that one failure could condemn a soul. And in her deteriorating mental state, she became convinced that she herself was evil, that she was corrupting her children, that by existing, she was damning them. This belief didn't arrive overnight, it evolved. Andrea loved her children deeply. That fact is what makes this case so difficult to accept. But love, when filtered through psychosis, can mutate. Her thinking became distorted. If I fail as a mother, and my children are influenced by my failure, then they will burn forever. This was not metaphorical fear, it was absolute. And once belief becomes absolute, it no longer negotiates with reality. In the months leading up to the murders, Andrea's condition worsened again. She stopped speaking. She stopped eating properly. She stared into space for hours. Her psychiatrist made a final recommendation. She should never be left alone with the children. That warning was explicit, and it was ignored. This question haunts the case. Andrea's husband believed structure would heal her, that discipline would stabilize her, that faith would override illness. He was not cruel, but he was wrong. Mental illness does not respond to moral pressure. It collapses under it. Andrea's thinking shifted from fear to mission. She stopped resisting the thoughts. She stopped questioning them. Instead, she began waiting for the right moment. This is one of the most chilling details of the case. She believed God would give her a sign. When that sign didn't come, she decided the delay itself was the sign. When Andrea acted, she did not scream, she did not panic. She followed a sequence that made sense only to her. Each child was drowned quietly. Each body was placed carefully. There was no chaos in the house, only silence. This is what separates psychotic altruistic filicide from rage-based violence. There was no emotional explosion. There was resolution. When Andrea spoke to police, she didn't deny anything. She explained it calmly. She said she had waited too long, that her children were already corrupted, that she should have acted sooner. These statements confirmed what mental health experts feared most. She did not believe she had done wrong. She believed she had failed only by delaying. Public reaction was immediate and violent in its disagreement. Some called her evil, others called her sick. Many couldn't reconcile both. But this case doesn't allow for simplicity. Andrea Yates was profoundly ill, and 5 children were dead. Both truths exist at the same time. Prosecutors argued Andrea knew right from wrong. They pointed to her phone call to police, her statements, her composure.
But then something catastrophic happened. An expert witness falsely testified that an episode of a popular TV show had influenced Andrea's actions. The episode did not exist. That lie poisoned the trial, and the verdict would not stand. Andrea Yates was initially convicted of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, but the conviction was overturned because justice cannot rest on false evidence, even when the crime is unbearable. The second trial focused on reality, on psychosis, on medical records, on documented warnings. Experts testified unanimously. At the time of the killings, Andrea Yates did not understand reality. She believed killing her children was necessary to save them from eternal suffering. The jury reached a different verdict. Andrea Yates was found not guilty by reason of insanity. This verdict enraged many, but it acknowledged something critical. Punishment does not cure psychosis, and prison cannot treat delusion. Andrea was committed to a secure mental health facility, where she remains today. If Andrea was this ill, if doctors warned clearly, if hospitalizations occurred, why was she allowed to deteriorate to this point? That question leads us somewhere uncomfortable.
Andrea Yates did not collapse in secret. That is the most uncomfortable truth of this case. Her deterioration was visible, documented, repeatedly addressed, and repeatedly ignored. This was not a failure of one person. It was a convergence of failures across medicine, family, culture, and belief. Andrea's medical records read like a checklist of imminent danger: postpartum psychosis, multiple suicide attempts, catatonic withdrawal, auditory hallucinations, delusional religious thinking. Doctors did not disagree about her condition, they disagreed about control. Psychiatrists could stabilize Andrea temporarily, but once she showed improvement, she was discharged back into an environment that was actively worsening her illness. Why? Because the system prioritizes short-term stabilization, not long-term prevention. And because once a patient is no longer an immediate danger, the authority to intervene disappears. Andrea did not meet the legal threshold to be forcibly detained until it was too late. This is a critical distinction. Andrea could appear functional while still being profoundly delusional. She could bathe, cook, speak calmly, but inside her beliefs were rigid, absolute, and terrifying. The system mistook outward calm for internal recovery, and that mistake would prove fatal. From the outside, the Yates household looked disciplined and orderly. Inside, it was suffocating. Andrea was responsible for 5 young children, homeschooling, religious instruction, domestic labor, emotional regulation, with almost no adult support. Isolation is gasoline for psychosis, and Andrea lived inside isolation. Doctors explicitly warned that Andrea should not have more children. Her condition worsened with each pregnancy, and yet another pregnancy occurred. This decision has been debated endlessly, but what matters is not blame. What matters is impact. Each pregnancy deepened Andrea's psychosis. Each birth pushed her further from reality. The system did not intervene because reproduction is considered private, even when it's medically dangerous. Faith alone does not cause violence, but when combined with psychosis, it can become a weapon. Andrea's belief system did not offer flexibility. There was no gray area, no room for imperfection, only salvation or damnation, and she believed she was failing. This is where belief became lethal, not because faith told her to kill, but because illness twisted belief into certainty. One of the most troubling aspects of this case is how moral discipline was substituted for treatment. Instead of reducing pressure, structure increased. Instead of limiting responsibility, it expanded. Instead of removing Andrea from stress, she was immersed in it. The idea was simple. If she followed rules harder, if she prayed more, if she tried again, she would recover. But mental illness does not respond to effort, it collapses under it. In the weeks before the killings, Andrea showed unmistakable signs of imminent danger.
She stopped speaking voluntarily. She fixated on death. She withdrew completely. She stopped engaging with her children emotionally. Her psychiatrist recommended constant supervision. That recommendation was not followed, not out of malice, out of belief. Belief that structure would hold. Belief that faith would intervene. Belief that this time would be different. When Andrea was left alone with the children, every safeguard failed at once. Medical authority, family oversight, community intervention. There was no final barrier, and Andrea's delusion filled the vacuum. Some people argue this tragedy was unavoidable, that nothing could have stopped it. That is comforting, but not true. There were points of intervention, hard ones, uncomfortable ones, invasive ones, but real. Removing Andrea from the household long term, preventing additional pregnancies, mandating supervised care, reducing isolation. Each of these could have altered the outcome, not guaranteed, but possible. One reason this didn't happen is deference. Deference to religious autonomy, family privacy, parental authority. We are taught not to interfere, but there is a cost to that restraint, and in this case, children paid it. The courtroom became a reflection of society's conflict. Some jurors saw illness, others saw responsibility. Neither side was wrong, but the law demanded a choice. Was Andrea capable of understanding right and wrong, or was she trapped in delusion? The retrial answered that question medically, but not emotionally. The insanity verdict felt like injustice to many because it sounded like absolution. But insanity is not innocence. It is recognition that punishment does not apply when reality itself is broken. Andrea did not walk free. She was confined indefinitely to a secure psychiatric facility, still alive, still suffering, still aware now of what she did, which raises another question. Andrea Yates now lives with the knowledge of her actions, not filtered through delusion, not shielded by belief, but raw, unavoidable. This is something prison cannot replicate, and it complicates the idea of justice. What makes this case relevant today is not what happened, but what still happens. Postpartum psychosis is still misunderstood. Religious pressure still overrides medical advice. Isolation is still normalized as good parenting. The conditions that created this tragedy have not disappeared. The most dangerous myth is that love prevents harm. Andrea loved her children, and that love, distorted by illness, became fatal, which forces us to confront a terrifying truth. Love is not protection when reality collapses.
The house was quiet again. Too quiet. After the police left, after the ambulances, after the cameras and reporters packed up their equipment, the Yates home returned to stillness. Toys remained where they had fallen. Shoes sat by the door. The walls still held the echoes of children who would never run through them again. And Andrea Yates was gone, removed not as a criminal fleeing justice, but as a patient transferred into a system that did not know how to hold both horror and illness at the same time. The world demanded answers. What it received instead was discomfort. Andrea Yates's first trial became a national spectacle. Courtrooms are designed to answer specific questions. Did the accused commit the act? Did they understand it was wrong? Are they legally responsible? But the Yates case demanded answers to questions the legal system was never built to resolve. Can a person be both loving and lethal? Can illness erase moral agency? Who failed first, the mother or everyone around her? The prosecution argued simplicity. Andrea knew what she did was wrong. She called the police. She confessed. Therefore, she was sane. The defense argued reality. Andrea's mind was fractured. Her actions were dictated by delusion. Her understanding of wrong was filtered through psychosis. Therefore, she was insane. The jury chose punishment. Andrea Yates was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison. For many Americans, this felt like justice. For others,
It felt like denial. The conviction did not last. During the appeal process, it emerged that an expert witness for the prosecution had provided false testimony, claiming Andrea watched episodes of a television show depicting a mother killing her children. That episode did not exist. The credibility of the trial collapsed. In 2006, Andrea Yates was granted a retrial. This time, the jury listened differently. Medical experts were clearer. Psychiatric evidence was undeniable. The narrative shifted from evil to illness. Andrea Yates was found not guilty by reason of insanity. She was committed to a high-security psychiatric hospital, not freed, not forgiven, but removed from the criminal system entirely. The verdict ignited fury. Talk shows exploded. Headlines screamed betrayal. Online forums filled with rage. How could she get away with it? She killed 5 children. Mental illness isn't an excuse. But this reaction revealed something deeper. Many people feared what the verdict implied. Because if Andrea Yates was insane, truly insane, then this tragedy wasn't rare. It was preventable. And prevention requires responsibility. Society prefers monsters. Monsters are simple. They are separate. They reassure us that horror lives somewhere else. Andrea Yates didn't fit that narrative. She wasn't violent before. She didn't abuse her children. She didn't hate them. She was a woman with a documented psychiatric illness, deteriorating in plain sight. That reality was harder to accept than the idea of evil. Andrea Yates now lives in a secure psychiatric facility. Her days are structured. Her medication is monitored. Her delusions have largely subsided. And with clarity came devastation. Andrea has expressed profound grief, not filtered through illness, but through awareness. She understands what she did. She remembers her children. She mourns them. There is no redemption arc here, no transformation story, just a woman living inside the aftermath of irreversible actions. Public scrutiny eventually turned toward Rusty Yates. Why did he leave Andrea alone? Why did he ignore medical warnings? Why did he support continued pregnancies? Rusty maintained that he loved his wife, that he believed faith and structure would help, that he never imagined this outcome. Legally, he was never charged. Morally, opinions remained divided. But this case exposed a painful truth. Love does not replace responsibility. Good intentions do not negate consequences. In the years following the case, awareness of postpartum psychosis increased. Hospitals improved screening. Doctors spoke more openly about risk. Advocacy groups gained attention. But systemic gaps remain. Postpartum psychosis is still rare and still deadly when untreated. Families still struggle to recognize it. Cultural expectations still silence warning signs. Women still fear judgment more than diagnosis. Andrea Yates did not create these problems. She revealed them. People ask, who is to blame? Andrea? Her husband? Doctors? Religion? The system? The answer is uncomfortable. Blame is shared. Responsibility fractured across institutions that each deferred to someone else. Medicine deferred to family. Family deferred to faith. Faith deferred to endurance. And endurance became fatal. This case is not history. It is a warning, because the conditions that allowed it to happen still exist. Untreated severe mental illness, isolation disguised as devotion, motherhood idealized beyond human limits. Andrea Yates is not an anomaly. She is an extreme example of neglect. The most important question is not, how could she do this? It is, how close did we come to stopping it? And why didn't we? Andrea Yates believed she was saving her children. That belief was not love. It was illness. But illness did not act alone. It was enabled by silence, pressure, faith, fear, and inaction. And that is why this case continues to haunt us, because it forces us to confront a truth we would rather avoid. Sometimes the greatest danger is not cruelty, it is unquestioned belief. If you've stayed with this story to the end, thank you. Stories like this are not easy to hear, but they are necessary to tell. Now I have some questions for you. Where should the line be drawn between autonomy and intervention? Can society respect faith while prioritizing medical safety? How many warning signs are enough before action becomes mandatory? Leave your thoughts below, respectfully. These conversations matter. If you value deeply researched, responsible true crime storytelling, subscribe to support the channel. Like this video to help others find it. Share if this story changed how you see mental illness. Before you go, the Andrea Yates case forces us to confront how easily warning signs can be ignored and how normal families can hide unimaginable darkness. But what if I told you there was another father, a man who planned his escape for years, who murdered his entire family, then disappeared, started a new life, and almost got away with it forever? In our next episode, we uncover the chilling case of John List, a man who killed his wife, children, and mother, then vanished for nearly 2 decades while living under a new identity. It's a story about control, religion, and a monster who believed he was justified. That video is waiting for you right now. Click the next video appearing on your screen now, and let's continue.